My name is Patrick O'Connell. I'm 30 years old and I was a talented and dedicated game designer living in San Jose, California. I was just days away from launching the project of my life, an innovative game that promised to revolutionize the indie market. And soon I would marry Megan Davies, my fiancée and colleague in the industry. I was the creative brain behind the game, having dedicated years to its development. Megan, who was also a designer, seemed supportive, but secretly saw my success as an obstacle to her own ambition. I'm a man of codes and algorithms, more focused on creation than on industry politics. My trust and passion turned out to be my greatest weakness. If you enjoy stories of cold-blooded revenge and gripping plot twists, like this video and subscribe to the channel now. There are brand new, unreleased stories here every day, each one more intense than the last. The betrayal came from where I least expected it. Megan, driven by envy, secretly sabotaged the code of the game I was about to launch. She stole my idea to present it as her own at a major gaming industry conference. I discovered the first signs of sabotage at the last minute while reviewing the code before delivering the final version. Small changes, bugs planted intelligently, linking directly back to her. The penny dropped. My fiancé had stolen and sabotaged the work of my life. I felt a piercing pain, a betrayal that went beyond love, but the shock gave way to cold clarity and determination. I wouldn't make a scene backstage. The revenge would be on stage, public, devastating. Megan Davies, 30 years old, my fiancée and professional colleague, had revealed herself to be envious and ambitious. Her justification was the pursuit of recognition and glory. She believed that by appropriating my idea, she would achieve the success she craved more quickly. Looking back, I noticed Megan had become more competitive regarding my successes, and she showed unusual interest in specific segments of my code, under the pretense of helping. My intuition, as a programmer who understands vulnerabilities, made me question things. I began documenting every change, every access, creating a security log that would become my proof. Years before, I had incorporated into the game's base code a secret signature and a hidden flaw activated by copying. This flaw was designed so that if the code were replicated without my authorization or sabotaged, it would cause a spectacular error at the moment of greatest public use, without compromising the original system's integrity. I had an irrefutable digital record of my authorship and the changes made to the code, linking them directly to Megan. This would be the undeniable proof of her fraud. I didn't reveal my discovery or my plan to anyone. My focus was ensuring the hidden flaw would be activated on the most public stage possible, the major gaming industry conference. Megan's sabotage wasn't an impulsive act, but a strategy to steal my life's project and surpass me in the field, using my own creation against me. There were no direct accomplices, but Megan's ambition was so blind that she acted alone in this devastating betrayal. The betrayal was calculated for the moment of her greatest glory and my greatest humiliation. The conference was a spectacle. The Game Dev Summit in Los Angeles was the industry's biggest annual event, where careers were made and broken. Megan was on stage, confident, presenting my game to thousands of colleagues, investors, and journalists. She wore a sleek black blazer and spoke with the kind of polished confidence that comes from stolen preparation. The massive LED screen behind her displayed the game's title screen as she began her presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm proud to introduce Neural Nexus, a revolutionary indie game that will change how we think about AI integration in gaming, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the packed auditorium. I sat in the third row, wearing a simple gray hoodie, completely invisible among the crowd. My hands were folded calmly in my lap, but my heart was racing with anticipation. Years of work had led to this moment. Not the moment of my triumph, but the moment of her downfall. The presentation started flawlessly. Megan navigated through the game's interface with practiced ease, explaining features she had never truly understood. The audience was captivated. Tech journalists frantically typed notes on their MacBooks. Venture capitalists in the front row leaned forward with interest. For 15 minutes, everything went exactly as she had planned. "Now, let me show you the real innovation," Megan announced, clicking to initiate the live gameplay demonstration. "Our proprietary AI system creates truly dynamic environments that adapt to player behavior in real time." The game loaded beautifully. The graphics were stunning, months of my life condensed into pixels and code. The crowd murmured appreciatively as the main character moved through a futuristic cityscape. Megan's confidence was at its peak. She had stolen my life's work and was about to be rewarded for it in front of the entire industry. Then, exactly 17 minutes and 32 seconds into the demonstration, my hidden failsafe activated. The screen flickered once, then twice. Megan's mouse clicks became frantic as the game's frame rate dropped dramatically. The smooth animation turned into a stuttering mess. The audience began to shift uncomfortably in their seats. "Technical difficulties," Megan laughed nervously, her voice cracking slightly. "Let me just restart this section." But there was no restarting. The error cascade I had programmed years earlier was now in full effect. The game's memory usage spiked to impossible levels. The beautiful textures began corrupting, turning into psychedelic nightmares. The character models stretched and distorted beyond recognition. I'm not sure what's happening," Megan stammered, desperately clicking through menus that were no longer responding. Her polished confidence was evaporating in real time. The crowd was no longer murmuring. They were dead silent, watching a career implode on stage. The enormous screen behind Megan now displayed a grotesque error message in bright red text. "System integrity compromised. Unauthorized modification detected." My failsafe wasn't just causing the game to crash, it was broadcasting the evidence of tampering to everyone in the auditorium. Lines of code scrolled across the screen, highlighting the exact modifications Megan had made, time-stamped and traced back to her development environment. This isn't... Megan's voice trailed off as she realized what was happening. Her face went pale as she read the error messages appearing on the screen behind her. The conference organizers rushed onto the stage. The head of tech operations, a middle-aged man in a Microsoft t-shirt, grabbed the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing some technical difficulties. We'll take a brief recess while we investigate." But the damage was done. In the span of 5 minutes, Megan Davies had gone from industry rising star to public fraud. The error logs clearly showed unauthorized code modifications, plagiarism markers, and most damning of all, my original authorship timestamps embedded deep within the game's architecture. As the auditorium erupted in confused chatter, I remained perfectly still in my seat, watching Megan's world collapse with the same calm precision I had used to program its destruction. She stood frozen on stage, staring at the evidence of her betrayal displayed in 40-foot-high letters behind her. The Game Dev Summit had just witnessed the most spectacular public failure in its 15-year history, and I was the only person in that room who knew it was exactly what was supposed to happen. The 30-minute recess stretched into 2 hours. While the audience filed out for overpriced coffee and networking sessions, I remained in my seat, watching the chaos unfold from my front row seat to justice. Conference staff swarmed the stage like forensic investigators at a crime scene, their laptops and diagnostic equipment creating a maze of cables and blinking lights. Dr. Sarah Chen, the summit's chief technical officer and a legend in the industry, took personal charge of the investigation. She had built 3 successful game studios in Silicon Valley and had zero tolerance for fraud. I watched her examine the error logs with the methodical precision of a surgeon, her team of engineers hovering around her like residents in an operating room. "This is unprecedented," she announced to the conference organizers, her voice carrying across the nearly empty auditorium. "The code shows clear evidence of unauthorized modification and intellectual property theft. We need to conduct a full forensic audit before proceeding." Megan had been escorted to a private conference room, but I could see her through the glass partition, pacing like a caged animal. Her sleek black blazer was wrinkled now, her perfectly styled hair disheveled. She kept checking her iPhone, probably calling her lawyer or her agent, anyone who might help her escape the trap she had walked into. The investigation team worked with the efficiency of a federal task force. They connected my original development machine to their network, comparing timestamps, analyzing code signatures, and tracing the digital fingerprints I had embedded throughout the game's architecture. Every modification Megan had made was documented, cataloged, and cross-referenced against my original files. "Jesus Christ," one of the junior engineers whispered, loud enough for me to hear. "This is like a master class in digital forensics. Whoever wrote this original code is a genius." I allowed myself a small smile. The irony wasn't lost on me. They were praising my work while investigating its theft. "Doctor." Chen approached the microphone as the audience began filtering back into the auditorium. The buzz of conversation died immediately. In the gaming industry, her word was law, and everyone knew something significant was about to happen. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "After a comprehensive forensic analysis, we have determined that the game presented by Ms. Davies contains stolen intellectual property and unauthorized code modifications." The auditorium erupted. Journalists scrambled for their phones. Investors whispered urgently to their assistants, and developers throughout the crowd exchanged shocked glances. This was bigger than just a technical failure. This was a public execution. "The original code was written by Patrick O'Connell," Dr. Chen continued, and my name echoed through the sound system like a verdict. "Mr. O'Connell's authorship is conclusively proven by embedded timestamps, coding signatures, and a sophisticated authentication system built into the game's core architecture." I stood up slowly, my legs slightly shaky after sitting motionless for hours. 3,000 pairs of eyes turned toward me as I made my way to the aisle. The crowd parted like the Red Sea, creating a path to the stage. I could hear cameras clicking, phones recording, and the low murmur of recognition spreading through the audience. "Furthermore," Dr. Chen announced as I climbed the steps to the platform, "Ms. Davies's modifications appear to have been designed to sabotage the game's performance, suggesting not just theft, but malicious intent." The irony was perfect. Megan's clumsy attempts to cover her tracks had actually made the sabotage look intentional, adding malicious damage to the charges of plagiarism. My hidden failsafe had been so elegantly designed that it appeared to be part of her sabotage rather than my revenge. I reached the microphone, looking out over an audience that an hour ago had been ready to celebrate a fraud. The massive screen behind me now displayed my original code, clean and elegant, next to Megan's butchered modifications. The contrast was stark, like comparing a Beethoven symphony to a child banging on pots and pans. 3 years ago, I began developing neural nexus in my apartment in San Jose, I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. Every line of code, every algorithm, every creative decision came from countless nights of work and innovation. The audience was dead silent, hanging on every word. In the gaming industry, intellectual property theft was the ultimate sin, and they were witnessing its exposure in real time. Ms. Davies had access to my development environment as my fiancée and colleague, I continued, letting that relationship detail sink in. She used that trust to steal my work and present it as her own. But as you can see, the truth has a way of revealing itself. I gestured to the screen behind me, where the forensic evidence was displayed in undeniable detail. Code timestamps, modification logs, and authentication signatures created an airtight case that would hold up in any court of law. The gaming industry is built on creativity, innovation, and trust, I said, my voice growing stronger with each word. When someone violates that trust, they don't just harm an individual. They harm the entire community that depends on intellectual honesty. The applause started slowly, then built to a thunderous crescendo. 3,000 industry professionals were witnessing the triumph of justice over fraud, and they were celebrating not just my vindication, but the protection of their own creative work. As the ovation continued, I caught sight of Megan through the glass partition. She was slumped in her chair, her face buried in her hands, her career and reputation destroyed in the span of a single afternoon. The woman who had tried to steal my life's work had instead orchestrated her own professional suicide on the biggest stage in the industry. The conference organizers approached me with contracts and business cards, but I wasn't finished yet. This was just the beginning of my comeback story. The aftermath of the Game Dev Summit was swift and merciless. Within hours, the story had spread across every major gaming publication, tech blog, and social media platform. The Great Gaming Fraud of 2024 became the industry's most talked-about scandal, with my name attached not as a victim, but as the brilliant developer who had exposed it. By the time I returned to my hotel room at the Beverly Hills Marriott, my phone was buzzing with calls from publishers, investors, and journalists. CNN Tech wanted an exclusive interview. The Wall Street Journal was preparing a feature story. Venture capital firms from Sand Hill Road were offering meetings. The gaming industry, which had been ready to celebrate a fraud just hours earlier, was now falling over itself to support the victim of that fraud. But the most satisfying call came from an unexpected source: Electronic Arts. Their head of acquisitions, Michael Rodriguez, had been in the audience during the conference and wanted to discuss purchasing Neural Nexus for their indie division. The irony was perfect. The game Megan had tried to steal was now worth 10 times more because of her failed theft. "Patrick, what happened today was unprecedented," Rodriguez said during our phone call. "Your handling of the situation showed not just technical brilliance, but strategic thinking that we rarely see in this industry. We'd like to offer you a 7-figure deal for the game, plus a development contract for future projects." I took the deal, but not before making one condition. All press releases and marketing materials would tell the complete story of how the game was stolen and recovered. I wanted Megan's betrayal to be permanently linked to my success, a cautionary tale that would follow her for the rest of her career. The legal consequences came next. Within a week, my intellectual property lawyer, Jennifer Walsh from a prestigious Century City firm, had filed a comprehensive lawsuit against Megan for copyright infringement, breach of fiduciary duty, and fraud. The evidence was so overwhelming that her lawyers advised her to settle immediately, rather than face a public trial. Your foresight in documenting everything and building those authentication systems into your code made this the easiest intellectual property case I've ever handled, Walsh told me over lunch at Spago in Beverly Hills. "Most IP theft cases take years to prove. You handed us a smoking gun with fingerprints. The settlement was substantial, enough to fund my next 3 game projects without outside investment. But more importantly, it included a clause requiring Megan to publicly acknowledge her theft and issue a formal apology through industry publications. She had to admit, in writing, that she had stolen my work and apologized to the gaming community for her fraud. The public apology appeared in Game Developer magazine 3 months later. It was buried on page 47, written in the dry legal language of defeat. I, Megan Davies, acknowledge that I unlawfully appropriated the intellectual property of Patrick O'Connell and presented his work as my own. I deeply regret this action and apologize to Mr. O'Connell and the gaming development community. Reading those words was more satisfying than any amount of money could have been. The woman who had tried to steal my life's work was now forced to publicly admit her crime and beg forgiveness from the very industry she had tried to deceive. But Megan's downfall was far from over. The gaming industry is surprisingly small, and word travels fast. Within 6 months, she was unemployable. Every major studio, indie developer, and gaming startup had heard the story. Her name had become synonymous with intellectual property theft, the kind of reputation that follows you forever in a creative industry built on trust and collaboration. I heard through mutual contacts that she had moved back to her parents' house in Phoenix, Arizona, and was working at a Best Buy selling video games to teenagers. The woman who had tried to steal my success was now explaining the features of PlayStation controllers to confused suburban parents. The poetic justice was almost too perfect. Meanwhile, Neural Nexus became a phenomenon. The game that had been sabotaged on stage in Los Angeles launched 6 months later to critical acclaim and commercial success. It won 3 awards at the Independent Games Festival, including Excellence in Design. The theft scandal had actually generated more publicity than any marketing campaign could have achieved. But the real vindication came when I established O'Connell Interactive, my own game development studio, in a converted warehouse in San Francisco's Soma district. The company was built on the principles that Megan had violated: creativity, integrity, and respect for intellectual property. My first hire was Dr. Sarah Chen, who had conducted the forensic investigation that exposed the fraud. "You know what impressed me most about that day?" she asked during our first strategy meeting in my new office. "You never lost your cool. You could have made a scene, confronted her publicly, destroyed her reputation with drama. Instead, you let the truth speak for itself. That's the mark of a true professional." The truth was, I had learned something valuable from Megan's betrayal. Revenge is most effective when it's delivered with precision rather than passion. The best way to destroy someone who has wronged you isn't to attack them directly. It's to create conditions where they destroy themselves. 2 years later, Neural Nexus had sold over 2 million copies worldwide. O'Connell Interactive had a staff of 35 developers and 3 games in production. I had been featured on the cover of Wired magazine as one of the digital visionaries shaping the future of gaming. The theft that was supposed to end my career had actually launched me into the stratosphere of the gaming industry. The final piece of poetic justice came when I received an email from Megan herself, sent from a generic Gmail account. The subject line read, "Congratulations on your success." The message was brief. "Patrick, I've been following your career and wanted to say that I'm genuinely happy for your success. I know my actions were inexcusable, and I've had to live with the consequences every day since. You deserved better, and I'm sorry." I read the email twice, then deleted it without responding. Some bridges, once burned, should never be rebuilt. The woman who had tried to steal my life's work had learned the hardest lesson of all, that genuine success cannot be stolen, only earned through talent, hard work, and integrity. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and leave a comment telling me what you thought. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to receive alerts about new stories like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.